In childhood, which is the period between birth and adolescence, research on social development often focuses on family relationships and emotional states, as those are thought to play the biggest role in childhood development. In this video, we'll talk about things like parenting styles and attachment theory. Attachment theory is one of the most well-researched theories in psychology and has a ton of evidence to support it. This theory was developed by psychologists John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. Right when a baby human is born, there is a deep emotional bond that is instinctually formed with the infant's caregivers. Typically, the mother is the primary caregiver, but that's certainly not always the case. It could be fathers, relatives, or other caregivers. The significance of this strong emotional bond is that the caregiver helps the child develop, and the child will develop in healthier ways if it knows that it can depend on the caregiver for nurturance, learning, growth, and survival. So virtually all humans do this. In this sense, attachment theory is a theory of development and a theory of evolutionary progress. That is, how kids grow from infants to adults. But it's also a theory of individual differences and personality traits, which are actually pretty stable over time. So attachment theory explains change, but it also explains stability. The individual difference part of the theory manifests as attachment styles, which are qualitatively different types of attachment bonds between kids and caregivers. A majority of babies have a secure orientation to their caregivers, meaning that they are comfortable relying on their caregivers for support and are able to effectively utilize their caregivers to explore their environments. When kids don't feel secure, this mostly results in one of two insecure attachment styles referred to as avoidant and anxious ambivalent. Avoidant babies tend to be more dismissing toward their caregivers, sometimes resisting close contact, whereas anxious ambivalent children may demonstrate oscillating behavior, both resistance and affection, as a response to inconsistent care and support from the parent. The key thing that unites both of these insecure styles is that these kids have more difficulty with socio-emotional growth. They tend to have more social conflicts and more distress in their relationships. There seems to be a correspondence between attachment style of caregivers and attachment style of children. So there may be a generational transmission of attachment patterns from parent to child. Parenting styles were studied and coined by developmental psychologist Diana Baumrind. Parenting styles arise from the ways caregivers resolve conflicts that naturally occur during a child's development. These two broad factors on which parenting styles are based are warmth and responsiveness, which you can see on the left side of the chart, and expectations control, which you can see on the top. Generally, authoritative parenting, that is high on both warmth and expectations, is preferred. Authoritarian parenting has high expectations of the child, but is cold and emotionally rejected, like a dictator or helicopter parent. Permissive parenting has high warmth, but low expectations and social boundaries, sometimes spoiling their kids or allowing antisocial behavior to happen. And uninvolved is the worst of both worlds, and often appears disinterested and self-absorbed. As children progress toward adolescence, the parent-child relationship enters a period of co-regulation, in which parents and children come to recognize the competence and autonomy of each other. Parents and children may also need to renegotiate or redefine relationships after major familial stresses, such as divorce, financial problems, parent mental health concerns, etc. Your textbook mentions a term called the family stress model, which suggests that part of the impact of parenting on children's development depends on how parents are able to manage external stressors, including from their romantic relationships, money or work problems, and health issues. Aside from attachment styles, other variables comprise individual differences or personality traits in young children. Kids don't really have personality traits in the same ways that adults do, but may still have consistent tendencies that we can study and understand. Temperament is defined as a category of traits that have to do with things like emotional reactivity and self-regulation. Babies vary in terms of energy levels, which is sometimes characterized as activity level and distractibility, as well as how emotionally stable they are, which is sometimes characterized as sensitivity and approachability. Some kids are more active than others, some are shyer than others, but shyness in kids is not exactly the same as shyness in adults. Temperament in childhood has a strong biological foundation and is part of what we call biological disposition. Temperament plays an important role in the types of experiences that they are likely to have. Goodness of fit refers to how well a child's temperament meshes with their environments. For example, an adventurous child whose parents regularly take her on weekend hiking and fishing trips would be a good fit to her lifestyle, supporting personality growth. By contrast, if the same child were born into a family that prefers a sedentary lifestyle, distress is more likely to happen, which could lead to familial conflict and the resulting emotion regulation or social skills difficulties. In addition, a baby who's more fussy and distractible might end up eliciting stricter or more severe parenting practices compared to a baby who's more easygoing. Kids have a causal impact on the type of caregiving they receive. Children affect the socialization of their parents, just as parents impact the socialization of their kids. Therefore, the personality traits that eventually result in people is a product of the interplay between biological disposition and experience, nature and nurture. Part of what parents do to help children develop is to teach them things. Sometimes this happens through explicit teaching, like if a parent teaches a child how to read. Sometimes it happens through modeling, where a child mimics the behaviors of their parents and caregivers. Social referencing refers to when a child looks to their parent for clues on how to react or interpret a situation. This is different from modeling, where the actions are entirely within the parent. Social referencing is more interactive. For example, if a child falls off their bike and scrapes their knee, and the parent looks wide-eyed and freaked out, then the child will interpret this as a cue of danger, and their response will also be more extreme. But if the parent is calm and reassuring, then the child will interpret the situation as more mild, and their response will be less extreme. Social referencing is connected to a concept called theory of mind, which develops in early childhood and is the way in which people understand that their minds are different from other minds. In other words, you know that you have certain knowledge and emotional tendencies, but other people do not have the same knowledge or emotional tendencies as you do. Really little kids don't exactly have this, and it doesn't develop fully until about age 4, although it can partially develop in toddlerhood. Theory of mind gives rise to empathic concern for others and allows for people to practice deception, since the act of lying requires at least partial theory of mind. Theory of mind is not something that can be explicitly taught and is thought to develop naturally. However, it could be that parents play a role in helping theory of mind develop by encouraging kids to imagine what other people are thinking and feeling inside. Finally, even though parents' behavior does impact children's development, this doesn't happen in isolation. Parents' actions are happening in the broader societal context, and the way they teach their kids to behave is typically in concordance with societal values. Your textbook talks about things like conscience and gender schemas, which are not strictly speaking just passed down from parent to child. Rather, sometimes parents channel societal norms and values to the child. This is in some sense a deliberate choice if parents want their kids to be considered quote unquote good and accepted by members of their community. Parents may also want to promote gendered traits in their child, and while historically this was in a very gender conforming way, in recent years there's been a growing interest in gender neutral parenting. We don't yet know the extent to which parents can actually influence gendered traits after early childhood in a way that is independent of societal norms and values.